Hello, juniors. I hope you guys are having a great day so far. Today we're going to be diving into your practice ACT test date information, details for the day of, and tips. I hope you guys are ready. This is going to be a really great opportunity for you guys to not only get familiar with the ACT, but also prepare for your actual ACT test on March 30th, which we'll talk a little bit more about later on. And so I hope you guys are ready. A lot of schools are test optional, but with the future, we never know. Some schools are still requiring the ACT, so it's going to be really important for you to prepare for the ACT. Regardless of whether they're test optional or not. This can greatly help in getting into the schools that you're really interested in, and also just prepare you in general for some of the questions that will come up on your actual ACT test date. So let's go ahead and get started. So for the day of, that is going to be this coming Wednesday, February 3rd. It's going to be mandatory for all juniors. And that's just going to be your practice test. So your actual ACT test date will be March 30th, like I said a little earlier. And so I don't want you guys to feel, anxious for, Wednesday and feeling like you're not very much prepared. That is just a practice test to kind of see what we need to work on. What's going to be really good with the ACT practice test that you guys are going to take Wednesday is that it will be able to see, you'll be able to see, again, not only get familiar with the practice test or the actual ACT test, but see what areas you need to improve on. And so once we get your results back and you can kind of generalize how you felt with the ACT and maybe some things that you can do to better prepare for next time, we'll be able to focus on that and kind of work on that together for March 30th. For the practice test, back to Wednesday, that will be your normal Wednesday schedule from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. You'll be taking the test online, and you'll be able to log into those Zooms for your advisory classes through your Schoology account. And so making sure you're going to your advisory class so that you can be in that Zoom room to take that test online. The sections that will be included will be English, math, reading, science, and writing. You'll take those in that order. Now, that being said, those will be broken up, so you get a little bit breaks in between. You get to kind of just relax for a little bit and prepare for the next test. That will be distributed in that order again. Accommodations. So if you have, and you need accommodations, we'll be able to reach out to you guys to provide you those separate Zoom links to join instead of being in your advisory classes. So just be on the lookout for that if you have those accommodations in place. Some tips for that day or the day preparing for that. Get some rest the night before on that Tuesday, and make sure you're well rested for the next day to take those tests. Don't be late. This is mandatory for all juniors. Again, this will be online, so just be ready to be on that Zoom for your advisory class to take that test. Alrighty, so now we can get into the tips for the practice test and generally just for the ACT altogether. And so, first tip I have is eliminate choices. If a choice sounds downright absurd, contains a clear grammatical error, or it is completely unrelated to the passage, just cross it out. You will be 25% closer to guessing the correct answer with each choice you eliminate. So this is going to be really key in using the process of elimination, making sure you're going through the passage, just crossing out any answers that are not it, and you're working your way to the couple two that you narrowed it down to. Tip number 2, shorter is sweeter. So the ACT test favors short, concise answers. So think about which answer choice says the most in the fewest words. So chances are that will be the correct answer. Again, checking your answers, making sure you're eliminating, but also trying to find the answer that kind of provides, a clear understanding of, what the question is asking, but also not something too wordy that just kind of goes on and rambles on, something completely separate from what you're supposed to be answering. Tip number 3, read actively. So we're going to want to, while we're reading, question to help you anticipate for what might be asked later on. a good rule of thumb is to also comment on each of the paragraphs for what that paragraph talks about, so that you're not spending your time going back and reading the whole passage. That is going to be really helpful. Another thing that will be really helpful is anticipating what will happen next. That can kind of help prepare, again, with your answer choices, but also just understanding the passage all together, making sure you're not just reading it to read it. Really tear it apart and kind of work your way through it. Tip number 4, avoid extremes. So be aware of extremes. It's harder to support extreme answers than moderate answers. So for example, some of your extreme answers might include like all, every, only, always, and the rest you can see there. Those are generally, general words that you can use to kind of, again, generalize the answer. So you want to make sure, in some cases those can be the answers, but making sure that those general answers or those general word choices aren't interfering with what the question is asking. All right, tip number 5, mark it up. So a blank ACT booklet is a sad ACT booklet. The more you jot down, underline, and circle, the better. So not only will this help you, working your way, again, commenting on each of the paragraphs, underlining key terms or key words or key things that you need to remember. This is going to be really, helpful to just kind of working that all together for you. So underlining the main idea while reading, put an X next to specific details that you may need to remember, and then whatever works for you. You guys know some of the things that you have done in your time here at Heights. So if you have certain things that you do, you color code or whatever the case is, work on that. Tip number 6, skip and return. So on a time test, these are timed and they vary in terms of how long you have for each test, but saving a minute is huge. So if you have a question that's just super difficult, or maybe you're just kind of having a brain fart and you don't really know what it's asking, just skip the difficult questions and go to the easier ones. You can always come back to the hard questions when you have time, but you definitely don't want to spend time on that question, kind of just staring at the question and not really knowing where to go from there. You want to make sure that you can move on and do the majority of that test section, and then if you have time, come back to those. Tip number 7, always, always, always guess. The ACT does not penalize you for guessing incorrectly. So if you have a question, maybe you're stuck on that hard question, maybe you had time to go back and you just really don't know, always guess. If you can't figure out the problem at once, use the skip and return strategy. So this is where you're going to be able to use that. That is going to be a very helpful tip in all of the questions in all of the sections, not just reading or writing. Reading or English. You'll be wanting to use this again all throughout the ACT test. So always, always guess. And those are my tips. I hope you guys, really enjoyed, this little session that we had. I know you guys are probably a little worried for the practice test, but I do not want you guys to worry. This, again, is just a practice test. We're going to be able to work with what we have and see where you kind of lie within those results. And then, work on the specific sections that maybe you need to focus on. And so, no worries. This is just to kind of gauge where we need to be, and, kind of see where we go from there. So I believe in you guys. You guys are going to do amazing. Get that rest the night before. Don't be late, and we will see you guys soon. See y'all.